the early 1800s, the need for education in rural communities produced some of western New York's first schoolhouses. The earliest schoolhouse in the town of Wilson was established for adults in 1817 in a log cabin house about 1 mile south of the village. The first log schoolhouse in the town was built in 1819 about 1.5 miles east of the village on Lake Road. An average of 12 students a year were taught by Dr. John Warner of Newfane, who later became the first vice president of the Niagara County Medical Association. These early schoolhouses were usually constructed by a joint effort of the families who lived in the surrounding area, who often donated the land and the materials. The schools were very simple and consisted of a single large room with a desk and chair for the instructor and the appropriate number of desks and chairs for the students. The buildings were heated with either a wood-burning fireplace or a coal-burning stove. These early schools were very rough and plain and were also used as a place of worship as well as community gatherings. A former turn-of-the-century school teacher, Stella Kropp Steinhoff, left the following notes in her declining years.
Kindergarten was unheard of years ago. Hardly anyone started school before the age of 7, and it wasn't compulsory until the age of 8. When the heat of the summer gave way to the cool autumn, youngsters walked, sometimes several miles, to their little schoolhouse where grades 1 through 8 were taught by one teacher. No books were furnished by the district, and each pupil brought his or her own slate and other equipment necessary for their education. The only supplies the teacher could be sure of was a school register, a box of chalk, a couple of erasers, rubber-tipped pointers, dustpan, and broom. Inside sanitary facilities were unheard of, and a tin wash basin, water pail, dipper, and outside privy with Sears Roebuck catalog were all that was considered necessary. Heating was done with an old wood stove that could cope with chunks of wood 3 to 4 feet long, but temperatures were seldom comfortable, either too hot or too cold. Recreation and physical training were left to the individual pupil, but the long walks to and from school, plus the games thought up by the youngsters, were quite enough to keep everyone in good physical condition. School hours were from 9 a.m. till noon, with a mid-morning recess. The afternoon sessions lasted from 1 to 4 p.m., with a recess of 15 minutes. Not all districts had their own wells, so it was sometimes necessary to get water as a reward for a good behavior or a good deed. School vacations were few and far between, with the first on Thanksgiving and sometimes the Friday following. The week before Christmas and the New Year's was next. But if we had severe winter weather, Easter vacation was eliminated. Arbor Day proclamation was read, songs were sung, and recitations given. This was followed by a trip to the woods for a tree which was planted with proper ceremonies. Light refreshments followed. Then everyone was dismissed for the day. The last day of school was the biggest event of the year. There was always good things to eat, followed by a variety of games. The climax came when the final examination marks were revealed and promotions to the higher grades announced.
We started the day with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and repeating the Lord's Prayer. Then we settled down for our schedule, and I usually started at the bottom, first grade first, because their attention span is shorter and you got a better result if you gave them your first attention. Then they had something to do when they went back to their seats. And then it progressed on. Later, sometimes third and fourth grade went together in, say, their geography or their history lesson. But usually it was singular, alone. They had to pay for their own paper, their pencils, And I paid for my own red correction pencils, my own erasers, my own paper. We didn't have a requisition sheet and allow us to spend money like that, not here. To my knowledge, I never had to get here late and see the children waiting outside for me. I was always here ahead of them. I had a plan book. There were 6 grades, maybe say, I'm making this up, say 3 in first, 3 in second, and like that. Small numbers in the classes. And they would come up to the front of the room, near where my desk was, and the platform. And we would have classes. The rest of them would be working on assignments, reading library books, preparing math, or arithmetic we called it then, arithmetic papers, looking up facts and encyclopedias. They were busy, but they also, I'm sure, had their ear tuned to the people in front. I kept records of their tests. I had to make out their own tests all year. I had a pad, a gelatin pad, on which I put the copy made with a special pencil that was, I wrote out the test for each person. Tests were in health, in science, in arithmetic, geography, English. So I kept track, so when report cards came out, I had a record and I didn't have to make up stuff because I could forget.
When centralization was first proposed, many people were reluctant to give up their local schools over which their district had full control. It was felt that the one-room schoolhouse had many advantages, and with dedicated teachers, could give the children a first-class education. Others, however, disagreed, and when centralization was offered, saw a chance to place the children in large modern schools where, in addition to having graded classrooms, the pupils could receive instruction in band, art, industrial arts, home economics, physical education, and all related sports.
When I had classes, I would move from one area to the next, from first grade to second grade, third. And if the children weren't ready with the assignment I had given, I would say, all right, you need more time, so I'll go to the next class. And in that way, I didn't have to go very many times because they want your attention for a short period of time. So most always, they were ready for a class. Then they had their own work to do while the other classes were talking. And sometimes I had an older child sit by a smaller child and help them. The older child would explain some process to the younger child who didn't know. So it was a nice case of different, I would say generations, but that's the wrong word, different ages cooperating with each other and seeing the needs of each other and helping.
Right or wrong, the advocates of centralization won out, and by 1955, all rural school districts were absorbed into the Wilson Central School System. Most of the schools were sold, with the taxpayers in each district receiving a proportionate share of the money. Some schools were remodeled into homes, and only one, the Randall Road Schoolhouse, was not sold. It served for many years as a community center and lay abandoned for many years after that until 1996. The school district then sold the 26 by 40 structure to the Wilson Historical Society for the sum of $1. The society then cured a $12,000 grant from the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation to move the 1862 schoolhouse to the Wilson Historical Society grounds. Moving and restoring the Randall Road Schoolhouse was a step-by-step procedure. First, the foundation had to have holes knocked in it so large steel beams could be placed under it to support the building's weight. Next, the building had to be raised and placed on wheels. The building then had to be braced for any shaking and bumping it might encounter during the 3 to 4 mile move. After the schoolhouse was secured, it was time for the final step. Time to remove the roof and transport both pieces to the building's new home at the Wilson Historical Society. exception of a few restored or remodeled buildings, the rural school, once the backbone of our society, have all but disappeared from the scene.